A new season pass is coming with Marvel Snap's rollover later tonight, and while all the details haven't officially been confirmed, Zabu has been data mined to be the card that you will get when you purchase the 10 USD season pass. Looks like another very interesting build around card here. We got Silver Surfer last month that encouraged building a deck full of 3 energy cards, and this month we have Zabu with the ongoing effect your 4 cost cards cost 2 less with a minimum of 1. Now, something to note about Zabu that will need to be confirmed when it officially releases, but is likely the case, is that 4 cost cards means cards that had 4 in their energy cost when you put them into your deck, not something that currently costs 4 in your hand, meaning Zabu does not combo with something like Wave in the strict sense, meaning you can't play Wave and then play any 6 energy card from your hand out for just 2 resources. That being said, Wave does kind of combo with Zabu in the sense that Wave will set all of your opponent's cards to 4 generally, while your cards that started out at 4 will still get Zabu's cost reduction, similar to how things like Death, She-Hulk, or Sera still provide a cost reduction after Wave has set things to 4. So Zabu with Wave could definitely still be something worth exploring, but not in the general sense of making anything that you play cost 2. Now, for the rest of today's video, I have 6 different theory crafted decks, starting with a deck that is all Series 1 and 2 cards plus Zabu that are going to be things I'm looking forward to try out and hopefully give you all some ideas to try out at home. Let's go ahead and jump on into them. Our first Zabu deck list today is a budget one that everyone who has finished Series 2, aka is at least collection level 486, will have all the cards to complete. This deck is just looking to play all of the kind of quality 4 drops that Series 1 and 2 have to offer to get discounted with Zabu. We have Shang-Chi and Enchantress for good disruptive effects. We have Moon Girl and White Queen who synergize with Devil Dino at the top end of our curve. And we have Jessica Jones who curves really eloquently after Storm, floods out a location to be a 1-2 punch to pick up one of the 2 location wins that we typically need. Now, one thing to note, and it's something that is going to take to get feel for once we can start playing with these cards, is America Chavez worthwhile inside of these Zabu decks? Zabu is a card that we're going to want to draw early and often in any deck that he's being played in. In a normal deck will be 50% to have Zabu on turn 3 to play it out on curve. Adding America Chavez to the mix means we're effectively drawing from an 11 card deck for the first 5 turns of the game, which increases our chances to draw Zabu by about 4.5%, meaning about 1 in every 20 games we'll have Zabu on through when we wouldn't if we weren't playing America Chavez. I think Chavez is definitely worth playing in this budget build because we kind of lack other quality 4 drops or low end cards that work with the other things that we're doing, but it's a card that may or may not be good in the other builds that we are about to look at that involve some other higher series cards. Let's look at our first of those now. This next Zabu list is probably the one that is most all in on leveraging this card. It has a whopping 8 4 energy cards in it, and we are playing Sera at the top end of our curve. Something to note is that Zabu and Sera's cost reductions will stack, meaning all of our 4 energy cards will cost just a single point of energy on the final turn with Zabu. Sera should also be good for us in the games where Zabu is absent, because Sera on 5 means that we can play 2 of our 4 drops on the 6th turn of the game. Because this deck has such an incredible density of 4 drops, I'm also choosing to play Psylocke in this deck as something that can kind of help smooth out our curve in the games where Zabu doesn't show up. Similar to the budget deck list, this build is also leveraging Storm as another card that pairs very well with Jessica Jones, as well as Crossbone and Drax in this deck list. This deck list and the rest of the ones I'm going to feature with Zabu here today are also playing a card that currently doesn't see a lot of play in Marvel Snap, but one that I think Zabu is going to bring a lot of power level to the table with, and that's Crystal. Crystal says, on reveal, If she's played at your center location, shuffle your hand back into your deck and draw 3 cards. This means if we play Zabu on 3 and then we play 4-drop crystal on 4, or 4-drop 4-drop into 4-drop crystal on 5, we can have an entire handful of gas ready to go for the end turn that we're almost guaranteed to be able to play out in its entirety, thanks to Zabu making all of our 4-drops much, much cheaper. Our next Zabu deck list is a little bit less all in on its namesake, looking to use the card in perhaps a more honest manner, we could say, looking to make our variety of disruptive or high stat 4-drops cheaper in the late game turns. Spider-Man and Drax both notably have synergy with the other card in this deck's namesake, that is Daredevil, a card that lets us have perfect information about where our opponent's going to be playing out on the 5th turn of the game before we make our own plays. Spider-Man can lock up a location that our opponent's choosing not to play to, while we also can deploy something else to another location thanks to the cost reduction that Zabu will be providing. Goose feels like a fantastic disruptive element that's worth exploring in Zabu decks as well. It explicitly cares about the energy cost that you're actually paying for your cards, meaning our 4-cost cards being cost reduced by Zabu can be played into Goose's path, which is excellent. Sentinel feels like another card that will probably be reasonable inside of these Zabu shells, since its 2 energy can be used to make an early play as well as fill our late game curves when Zabu is making our 4-cost cards cheaper and cheaper. This next deck is one that I think I'm most excited to give Zabu a try in, because it's an archetype that just organically has a lot of 4 energy cards that synergize with what it is trying to do. This deck was brought to prominence when Luke Cage was added to Series 4, because Luke Cage prevents cards from reducing our card's power, and then this combos with Hazmat, who has an on-reveal effect to give all cards in play -1 stat. This works really well with Wong, as well as Absorbing Man, or being doubled up by Moon Girl, and Luke Cage also mitigates the downside of Typhoid Mary, who typically gives everything on our board -1. This deck also really struggles in the games where it doesn't find its 2 key cards in Luke Cage and Hazmat, so Crystal, in combination with Zabu letting us get our hand empty faster, should add an element of consistency to this archetype, I'm hoping, when it comes to being able to find our key cards before the short games of Snap are over. This next deck is another excellent candidate for Zabu because it has a lot of 4 energy cards in it naturally that work well with what it's trying to do. Darkhawk is the centerpiece here, a 4 energy, 1 power card that gets +2 stats for every card left in our opponent's deck. This means effects like Korg and Rockslide that additional cards to our opponent's deck make our Hawk more powerful, as well as Black Widow, who bites our opponent, denying them a draw on the following turn. Wong was a card that I was always hesitant to put into this deck in prior iterations, because if you were taking the time to Wong before you played something like Korg or Rockslide, you were losing part of the benefits of those cards, which is potentially bricking your opponent's draws in the early turn. In enter our new season pass card, Zabu, which can allow us to play Zabu on 3 and to Wong and Rockslide on the 4th turn to great effect. A kind of ideal or nuts draw with this deck looks something like Korg on 1, Black Widow on 2, Zabu on 3, Wong into Rockslide on turn 4, and then Moon Girl into our Wong path on turn 5, as well as some other play to make 3 Darkhawks in our hand so we can play them out across the entire board for massive stats on the 6th and final turn. Our 6th and final Zabu idea I'd like to highlight here today is a Mr. Negative variation. Mr. Negative, for those not familiar, takes the power and cost of all cards in our deck and inverts them, taking things like Arnim Zola and Iron Man and turning them into 0 energy plays with a reasonable stat line. A kind of crazy draw that this deck will be capable of is if we play Zabu on the 3rd turn of the game, we can play Mr. Negative and Crystal on the 4th turn, meaning we invert our deck and then can immediately start drawing those highly powerful cards for the following turn. This build is also looking to leverage a Wong and Shuri sub package to pair with Black Panther and Zola to give us something powerful to be doing in the games where Zabu and Mr. Negative don't show up. If you're interested in a Zabu deck that's got some backup plans, this is probably the one that I would recommend starting with first. If you're interested in seeing some of these Zabu decks in action, I'm going to be streaming all day today at twitch.tv/Jeff Hoagland through the reset tonight, where we'll be brewing and playing with Zabu right away, starting with lists that I featured in this video. There are 3 big questions on my mind that I'm going to be working to try and answer as I experiment with this new card over the course of the next week. The first is that, is America Chavez something we want inside of these Zabu shells? She gives us an approximately 5 additional % chance, or 1 in 20 games, to have our namesake card on curve, but is that worth her taking up a deck slot, and more importantly, taking up our draw on the 6th turn when we could be drawing a key card that costs 4 for just 2 resources? The second question on my mind is, will Wave slot reasonably into these decks? You can play Wave along with a cost-reduced 4-drop on the 5th turn to disrupt your opponent going into the 6th turn, as well as still allowing yourself to play 3 4-drops for just 2 energy each on the 6th and final turn. And finally, there's still counterplay to this effect in the game. Anytime a deck is looking to play out a bunch of cards on the final turn of the game, Leech is a card that's going to be relevant in the metagame. You know, Leech plus Leader is an archetype, and it will probably be pretty reasonable into these Zabu things. As of my recording this video, we currently don't have any news of a balance patch coming. Fingers crossed there's going to be some kind of patch this afternoon before things go up on January 2nd to kind of help smooth things out, but we'll see. We're still coming off for the holidays, so it might be a touch before we see that. Finally, do you have any ideas to play with Zabu that I didn't cover in today's video? Let me know in a comment down below, and I'd love to think about kicking them around on stream later this week. Thanks for being one of the awesome folks that made it all the way through to the end of my ramblings here today about our latest Season Pass card. If you're someone that happens to be new to the channel, consider subscribing. I post Marvel Snap deck highlights as well as tidbits and theory crafts like this 7 days a week, and I'd love to see you back again. Enjoy snapping and have fun playing all your 4-drops out with Zabu.